Fulfilled Radio, a voice you can trust.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Two Guys in the Bible, right here on Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust. I am William Bell, and with me is Dr. Dunn, Preston Dunn. How are you today?
I'm very well, William. Doing just really great. Getting ready, as a matter of fact, to take a couple of days off to celebrate Jan and my 49th wedding anniversary, which is tomorrow. And so we've decided to just kick back, chill out, and do nothing for a couple of days.
Well, I hear you. I heard that announcement earlier, and I said, well, goody for you, for both of you, and congratulations, by the way. That is a wonderful length of time to be married, as you know already, and I know you couldn't have made a better choice in your life. I don't know about Dan, but anyway.
Yeah. You know, some others have said things like that.
No, I'm just kidding you. You know that. But no, I think you're all a great couple, and certainly the right couple for the work that you're doing. You know, I don't think there could have been two people who could have been assigned and chosen for the task that you have taken up than the two of you, because you do it extremely well with, lots of integrity and lots of love, and everybody appreciates that. So congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that, and what you say is absolutely true. I could not have found a better helpmate, a better partner, if I had gone to the grocery store and picked one out off the shelf or custom designed something. It has just been an absolute wonderful, wonderful journey with her. All I can say is she has been just incredibly patient with her husband.
That's probably the story of most wives.
Yeah, it
I know
really
it's true for us.
But anyway, we had been talking about, well, what are we going to do? Well, we can't really afford to go a whole lot of anywhere, to make a big deal out of it. So we just decided to stay here locally and just kind of, like I said, just chill out, do a whole lot of nothing. And we've got a couple of places here locally that have some good sights to see that doesn't entail a lot of expense or a lot of travel. And so we're going to take advantage of that. And we're really, really looking forward to it.
Well, that's very good. Well, you certainly deserve it, and I know, that'll be a good break for you before getting, knee-deep into the Predators Program weekend that's coming up. And so you get a little bit of a break before that, and maybe that'll cut down on some of the stress that happens, during those events with all of the things that have to be done, I guess.
Yeah. And speaking of Predators Pilgrim Weekend, that is coming up just next month, July 12th through 14th here in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and at the Ardmore Convention Center. And we are getting reservations in on a very regular basis. We're thankful for that. We appreciate the fact that people have an interest. And it seems like the theme of Back to the Basics, or, what are the basics of covenant eschatology, pardon me, that topic and theme has resonated with an awful lot of people. And so in addition to, obviously, hoping the fact that we get an awful lot of people here physically, but we're going to be able to offer it once again via live stream on the internet, and we will be offering it free of charge. We will naturally welcome any gifts and contributions to help us out with the expense of that, because we are bringing in Chad Kennow from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and paying all of his expenses to be here. But Chad is just a marvelous asset. He just does a fantastic job with the technology and getting everything set up. So anything that anyone can do, it's not obligatory, but anything that anyone can do to help us out with the expenses on that is greatly appreciated. Last year we really didn't know how it was going to going to go financially, but everyone was so kind and so generous and pitched in. And, even if it was $1, that helped, and it allowed us to just, break even on our conference. And as we've said many, many, many times, as long as we can break even, we're perfectly happy with that.
Well, very good, very good. Well, I hope everything works out well. Looking forward to being there. I know there will be some great speakers, some great studies, and it's a great time of fellowship as well, which it always is. And just hopeful that everyone has a safe trip in as well as a return home. But it'll be 2 great days of study and great fellowship.
Absolutely.
So looking forward to it. And it's just around the corner, so it's time for
it
everybody
really
to get
is.
ready.
Yeah. Well, William, neither one of us were able to be here last Tuesday. You were at a debate between Holger Neubauer and Bill Lockwood down in Wichita Falls area of Texas. Why don't you give us just a little bit of a rundown on how that debate went?
All right. Well, the debate was held, I think it was June the 11th and 12th, or it may have been the 10th and 11th, but I think it was 11th and 12th. And in Iowa Park, Texas, at Bill Lockwood's location, the church where he labors. And it was very pleasant as far as, the demeanor and decorum of the discussion. Unlike, what we have experienced in times past and even in recent times at some of these discussions with, the way we're treated with a lot of, just rhetoric that goes on in those discussions. But this one was of a very high caliber, very respectful, very decent. And it was a pleasure to watch, to be quite frank with you, to participate in that discussion as far as being there. And, of course, I had little problems trying to get the computer to work and get the slides visible for Holger for the first speech. But later on, I think I managed with some help from Jacob from that congregation, I was able to manage it. As you know, I use a Mac that was given to me, so I never learned how to use it really. But anyway, it worked out okay. We finally got everything going. But as far as the discussion itself, it went very well. Bill Lockwood was very pleasant. I think he was in the affirmative the first night, and he presented, what was, I guess, typical and standard for that view. I didn't hear anything. We had debated Bill. You did back in 1992, and he was Steve's moderator for the debate with Jack Scott in 93, and in my debate in 94. And I didn't hear anything that was new necessarily in terms of his arguments. He started with his chart, which was the funnel chart, which I know, you are very familiar with. I actually took a picture of it and sent it to you because it brought back so many memories. Only this time, or maybe I didn't see the first one, but this time it was in full color on everything. And so, but, that chart was very telling from my perspective. And, I was just sitting there thinking to myself, how I could have just had a lot of fun with it. But he presented the chart, and then he made some standard arguments about the view that we hold denies baptism, which is not true, and he also claimed that we believed, that if we believe what we believe, that it meant the impossibility of apostasy, which also was not true, and Holger responded to his argument, particularly, and one other argument that he made, and, I can't remember them all, but one argument that he made was that Holger had a progressive salvation, that salvation was, if he believed what he did, that we didn't have salvation completed or consummated until 70 A.D., and Holger turned that back around on him and pointed out that he has salvation that, while claiming that he had complete salvation at the cross, yet he couldn't go to heaven until some alleged future return of Christ. And so Holger pressed him in all of the speeches to tell the audience why he couldn't go to heaven, and I don't think Bill made one single attempt at referring to that. Another of the major arguments that Holger made in the discussion was on Luke chapter 17, 30 and 31. And I thought that Bill went way out in left field on that one to say that it was a parable. We heard that before when we were talking about, in I think one of your debates, when we were looking at Ephesians 3:21, and he said it was a play on words. Well, Luke 17, 30, and 31 Holger made such a powerful argument on it, on the day that the Son of Man was revealed, etc., tying it together with the book of Revelation and the Apocalypse is there, but also, of course, with the corresponding text in Matthew 24, that the time they were fleeing was the day when the Son of Man is revealed. And all Bill could say on it was that it was a parable, and he never addressed the correlation between those two chapters on such a revealing and telling argument as that. So those were some highlights from the discussion.
Well, that's interesting. I know that when you and I discussed it privately, you said that you were just really disappointed that Bill just reiterated some of the arguments from the debate that he and I had. We actually had 3 debates without any alteration, and yet in my debates and in your debate with Steve and in Jack's debate with Steve, we completely and totally dismantled their argumentation, and we demonstrated that their own positions destroyed their own position. In other words, they're so self-contradictory that they couldn't argue against us without arguing against themselves. And so that gets back to the argument you just mentioned, him saying, oh, well, Holger has a doctrine of progressive salvation, that salvation wasn't completed until AD 70, therefore that means they weren't saved until AD 70. Well, that reminds me of in my very first debate with him, held right here in Ardmore, 1991, he got up, and by the way, it's wonderful to know that Bill's demeanor has changed, that his attitude has changed for the better. Holger had indicated to me that was true. I must admit I was probably somewhat skeptical. But nonetheless, in our first debate, he got up and said, well, Paul said that they had received the spirit of adoption to sonship. Preston says that adoption didn't take place until AD 70, which means they were not sons of God until AD 70. And these are his words. He said that means that they were bastards from Pentecost until AD 70 because they were not truly sons of God. They were waiting to be sons of God. Well, I got up and responded by pointing out Bill Lockwood believes that the redemption of creation, the adoption of sonship, the adoption of the body, the completion of the adoption, in other words, of Romans chapter 8 takes place at the end of time. That means that we are not yet fully sons of God, meaning, according to Bill Lockwood, that we are bastards now. And I well remember the stunned look on his face, and he never mentioned that argument again, period. Not so much as saying one single word about it. And so it was interesting.
Go ahead.
Finish
that statement.
Well, it was interesting to me when you say that he repeated that same basic argument down there with Holger.
Oh, yeah. Well, another very telling point in the discussion was the fact that Bill has, and maybe you knew this already, but he has totally abandoned the position that they took on Hammer and Tongs. They discontinued that paper, but when I debated Steve, they were still hot and heavy on you cannot take a passage on the Holy Spirit out of the first century, and you can't snatch and slap it out of the what was the statement? You can't snatch it out of the first century and slap a 20th century interpretation on it.
Yes.
And so we asked him at least Holger did, and I asked him personally about his position on the Holy Spirit. He doesn't take the Holy Spirit to miraculous work to be completed. Joel's prophecy to be completed in 70 A.D. anymore.
Right.
That's just astounding. That's remarkable because that was their sugar stick, at least they thought,
yes.
until they met us in debate. And I turned that back on Steve with his AD 70 glasses, taunting of me. And then I pointed out that he was wearing AD 70 bifocals on his Holy Spirit position because that position, demonstrated the truth of our proposition and of our, and so they apparently figured that out somewhere between the end of those debates and now, so that they don't hold that position anymore. Now, mind you, he did state that he believed the Holy Spirit's miraculous work ceased in the first century. So, he's just got a few more years that he delays it. It still would mean the coming of the Lord in the first century, but it certainly wasn't anything that he pressed or continues to advocate in the debate. And I just think that's absolutely telling on their part because of the implications it has for the resurrection, for the coming of the Lord, and for the fulfillment of all things, the law and the prophets. And that brings me to one more point.
Yeah,
go ahead.
You can. Well, the point that you're making is just devastating against their position. I mean, for them to surrender that element of their eschatology is truly stunning. I mean, it really, really is stunning.
Yeah, it is, and we haven't changed our position on that one whit. I mean, we're still holding to the same one we advocated then, which was the position they then held. And so, rather than go ahead and agree with us and come on over to the right side, they decide to abandon their hermeneutic, which was probably one of the only things they had right in the discussion for the most part. It was the major position that they had correct. But the other one was, when we did their questions on the law, in the debate with Jack Scott, and I know it was true with yours as well, but I remember particularly in the debate with Jack Scott, November the 1st, 1993, Steve Wiggins said that the law ended at the end of time. And then in two questions that we submitted to him in the debate in 1994, when I did it, November the 8th, I remember these dates because I just used them. But it was November the 8th, 1994, in two questions on the end of the law and the casting out of the sons of the kingdom. On one of them, he said it was AD 70, and on the other one, he said it was at the cross. And so in two debates, and probably more, because I'm sure they did it in the debates, three debates that you had with them, but they took three different positions on when the law ceased, and that was because of the pressure they were put under to talk about the end of the law. Now, here's the kicker on that. Bill Lockwood gets up in the debate with Holger and advocates 1 Corinthians 15, 54 through 55 as a future resurrection doctrine. Well, that's a quote from the Old Testament. Isaiah 25, 6 through 8, as you well know. Steve Wiggins, however, argued that the law and the prophets were not separated, but they were a unified whole. But then he said they were fulfilled at the cross. So there you have another major contradiction between Steve Wiggins and Bill Lockwood. Lockwood was trying to piecemeal the law and the prophets and put the law at the cross and the prophets yet future. Steve Wiggins comes back and said, no, you can't separate them. They are unified whole. They were all fulfilled at the cross. But then, of course, he had to change that position 2 or 3 times in the discussion. So that's what's out there. But here's the other thing, Don, and then I'm going to back off a little bit. These guys today still believe all the stuff that Bill and Steve argued in those debates. They haven't changed. I guarantee you, as you know already, their position is still that the law would not be fulfilled until all the law and the prophets are not fulfilled until this alleged future return of Christ that they place at the alleged end of time, and yet they will get up and say it was all fulfilled at the cross. That is a major, major flaw in their theology and eschatology.
Well, yeah, it's not just a major flaw; it's a fatal flaw, and
absolutely.
that's one of the disturbing things to me, William, and I know what it is to you, that you can find in these guys' writings that they take positions that are at least closer to the truth. And they will acknowledge that the law in 1 Corinthians 15 was the Old Covenant law, the law of Moses. I mean, and let's face it, folks, this is a very, very common view in the commentators. The futurist commentators, when they come to 1 Corinthians 15, 54 to 56, 55 and 56 specifically, where Paul said that the resurrection would be when the law, that was the strength of sin, would be removed, they just say the law that was the strength of sin was the law of Moses. And then they fail to see the implications of that. Okay, if the law that was the strength of sin was the law of Moses, and if the resurrection is when the law that was the strength of sin was removed, then the law of Moses is not removed until the end of time, at the resurrection of the dead. And like I said, some of these guys still acknowledge this, so they see the difficulty when they debate with us. So what do? Well, they dichotomize. They divide between the law and the prophets, as you've already pointed out, as Bill Lockwood did. But Steve Wiggins comes back and says, no, you can't do that. The law and the prophets were a united whole. And by the way, that's been the traditional view in the churches of Christ. I have quote after quote after quote from leaders in the churches of Christ who say that, the law and the prophets were a united whole. You can't break it up. They argue, you can't argue that the ceremonial law was one and then the moral law was different. It's a united whole. You can't argue that the law and the prophets were different. It's all called the law. But then when they get in their debates with us, when you can finally get them to debate us, all of a sudden it's a different story. And so Bill Lockwood and Steve Wiggins would argue, well, okay, the prophets are not completely fulfilled until the end of time. The law was taken away at the cross, so they abandoned their view that the law and the prophets was a united whole. They agree that the prophets are not fulfilled until the end of time. And they wind up in this muddled maze of confusion and self-contradiction. And then they proclaim, why, we've defeated this covenant eschatology stuff. And yet people are sitting there going, wait a minute, you've just taken, as you pointed out a moment ago, you guys have just taken three totally different positions on the law. And it's just like Bill Lockwood, in my debate with him on from the time we debated here in Ardmore until we debated at Marlow, Oklahoma, Bill Lockwood wound up taking 3 or 4 different positions on Daniel chapter 12. And the prophecy of the resurrection occurring when the power of the holy people would be completely shattered. And I was going to ask you, did Holger Neubauer introduce that argument in his debate with Bill?
No, I don't think that Daniel 12 became a major point in the discussion, as far as I can recall. Now, I did have to leave for just a few minutes during the debate because I had to go out and take care of something. And so I missed a little bit of it. And if they did, I wasn't there to hear it.
Well, I just can't believe that Holger would miss the opportunity to just really camp out on Daniel chapter 12. I mean, Daniel chapter 12 gave Bill Lockwood and Steve Wiggins absolute total fits. They literally did not know what to do with it. They literally decided and conspired to ignore everything that I had to say about it until I pressed them, I pressed him, I pressed him, and I pressed him. And he got up and he said, well, Daniel chapter 12, part of it was fulfilled in AD 70, but not the resurrection. And I pointed out, no, it says that all of these things, which refers to all of the antecedent things, which is inclusive of the resurrection at the end of the age and the kingdom, all of those things would be fulfilled when the power of the holy people was completely shattered. And I never will forget, I asked Bill on Matthew 24:36, when Jesus said, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not by any means pass until all of these things are fulfilled." Now, we knew for a fact that Bill applied that to the Lord's coming in AD 70 and the Great Tribulation, the abomination of desolation, etc., etc. So I asked Bill, how do you know that all of the previous things were fulfilled in AD 70? And he wrote back, because it says all of these things. So I made a chart. This was in the days of my handmade overhead projection charts. And I said, Bill Lockwood says he knows that Matthew 24:4-34 was fulfilled in that generation because it says all of these things will be fulfilled. Well, in Daniel chapter 12, it says all of these things would be fulfilled. And all of these things had to be inclusive of the resurrection, the end of the age, righteous shining forth in the kingdom. So, that was a powerful point. So, like I said, I was somewhat amazed when I haven't heard any reports at all that Holger even employed Daniel chapter 12. To me, given Bill's previous difficulty with Daniel chapter 12, this would have been a fantastic opportunity for Holger just to go to Daniel chapter 12 and to camp out there and to just simply say, right here is the foundation of my entire affirmative. You got to deal with this. Now, here's what you did when you debated Preston, because I had shared with Holger some of Bill's difficulty with it. But it would have been a prime opportunity for Holger to just really, really demonstrate the difficulty that Bill has had with that text.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I probably missed that if they did.
Hindsight is always perfect. It's always easy to say and to think, well, this is the way things should have been done, or boy, this would have been great, or that would have been effective, and what have you. But the strain, the stress, and the pressure of a debate in real time is literally incredible, as you well know. And you don't always think of the things that you would normally or even should normally. You got about a gazillion things running through your mind about what to say that's most effective at this moment, at this time, and to run with that, and hopefully it accomplishes your purposes. But I know Holger had to have done a very good job based upon what you just said. He did a good job. As I said, I'm a little surprised that Bill did some of the things that he did insofar as his basically his just simple repetition of the arguments that he made in debates with us, without at least refining some of those arguments and hopefully making them a little bit better if possible. But to me, William, that just goes to the fact that they really soon discover they don't have much for argumentation at all. And so
that's
all
true.
they can do is repeat the same old arguments.
Right. Total inflexibility as far as that goes. As you were saying, I recall one argument that was being made about Christ and the kingdom being a priest on earth, and Bill went to Hebrews 8, and Holger had already pointed out that text. He went to Hebrews 8, and he quotes almost all of the text until he gets down to the last part, in verse 4, where it says that he should not be a priest on earth, seeing that there are priests who offer gifts according to the law. And so Holger, came back and responded both from that text, but also to point out that, the passage from Jeremiah 22 with Coniah, etc., that, Christ could not have been a king on earth because he was a direct descendant. And so he had a problem both with being king and priest from that perspective. And
yes.
I don't think Bill responded to it, after that point, but he made a very effective argument there. And, there are other things that I'll think of as we go, but, like I said, it was a pleasant discussion. You were there, and you really felt that you came there to be educated, to listen, and not be agitated by, rhetoric and by a bunch of really negative comments, like those that happened in the denim debate. And that happens in, especially in ours. But, like I said, Bill was very cordial. He was very welcoming and even apologetic. And I really appreciated, his attitude. He didn't try to ignore me or anything. I mean, it was very well received, and I appreciated him very, very much.
Well, that's great. Life has a way of changing us if we are open to change at all. Life has a way of humbling us if we are willing to be humbled. And so it appears that perhaps that has happened in Bill's case. So it is something to be appreciated. It is something to be admired, even, to know that he has dropped the harsh rhetoric, that he has dropped the sarcasm and the bitterness and what have you, and decided to conduct himself as a Christian gentleman. And that's always a wonderful, wonderful thing. One of the things that I know people appreciate, people truly appreciate it, when two men can get up and express their differences with one another and yet do so with mutual respect, mutual kindness, and not engage in this kind of rhetoric that you're a false teacher, you're going to hell, you're nothing but a church splitter, you're nothing but a troublemaker, you're nothing but a kingite, you're nothing, that kind of rhetoric turns people off. People are not interested in rhetoric, they are interested in learning. And now, let's face it, there are always a certain amount of people at a debate that are just simply there to see their guy thrash the other guy. But chances of reaching that kind of a person are pretty slim to none. But you are seeking to appeal to the person that is there with a Berean heart, with a mind that says, tell me what you believe, tell me why you believe it, give me the evidence for believing it. Don't get up and impugn the integrity of your opponent and call him everything except a Christian. Treat him with respect, and I will respect you a lot more. But I am convinced, William, that in the case of some of our opponents in debate, they realize, they know, they understand very, very well that they cannot defend their traditional view with Scripture, with exegesis, by engaging in proper hermeneutic. And so they feel like they have to engage in castigation of the other person. They have to impugn the person's integrity and their standing before God. Because, after all, if they can impugn that other person's integrity, then, by George, that old boy, he's dishonest. I'm not going to listen to him. I don't care what he says. He's dishonest, so I don't care what he has to say. But that does have a tendency to backfire.
Right. I want to mention another argument that Bill Lockwood made, and they made this back, during the time we were debating them as well. And this one is one of those arguments that, kind of has the potential of really poisoning people's attitudes and ideas and concerning our position because of the very nature of it. And that is the argument that is often made by these brethren, that if we believe that there were two laws in existence at the same time, in other words, coexisting between the time of Pentecost and 70 AD, that we have the church engaged in spiritual adultery. In other words, that sons were being produced by adultery because you got these two laws in existence at the same time. And of course, Bill went to Romans 7:4 to make that argument, and he claimed that that is what Paul was arguing. Well, of course, we both know that he's reading the text incorrectly, because it doesn't say that the law died. It says the brethren died to the law in order that they should be married to another, which is a subjunctive, and points to a future time where the marriage was to be consummated. But Holger did a good job in responding to that, because he pointed out the fact that here you had the church as the virgin from Romans 11 and verse 2. Not Romans, but 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 2. And yet the church was producing sons, and he went to Acts chapter 21 to point out that the Jews were keeping the law, that Paul, kept the law, and James had him confirm that. And so he put the point back on Lockwood, that he needed to explain how the church is producing these sons. And of course, he was showing that it was done through the Spirit. But it's just one of those arguments that, will tend to poison the minds of people because they don't understand what's going on. And he was showing that, Christ was that the church was a virgin, just like Mary was a virgin and had a child, that here was the church as a virgin having sons, and therefore was not engaged in an adulterous relationship.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, we both knew that Holger would do a good job. Debates are a great opportunity for people to hear both sides. And as we were saying a moment ago, when two men can get up and present their case cogently, when they can present their case logically and do their very best to offer the evidence that is there, it allows people to think. It allows people to be rational and logical, and and to say, okay, here's the evidence for side A, here's the evidence for side B. I believe the evidence for side B outweighs the evidence for side A, so I wonder how the guy who's presenting the case for A is going to answer the evidence from side B. And so when you got someone that gets up and makes a point that is truly relevant to the subject at hand, and the other guy does not answer, then that becomes very telling. You pointed out to me that Bill Lockwood made the point in all 6 of his speeches that if covenant eschatology is true, that baptism is no longer valid. And of course, while some preterists do take that position, I don't believe that necessarily follows. I've got questions about the issue, as you and I both have discussed these things before. But that's not a logically necessary conclusion to make. But here's my point. Even if, I don't believe that it does, but even if covenant eschatology implied the cessation of baptism, that would not prove that the Lord has not come. It is truly an unrelated argument. It is an argument, and of course that debate was being held in front of primarily a Church of Christ audience, all of whom hold to the importance and the necessity of baptism. So Bill's obvious tactic was, if he can poison the well against these preterists, if he can poison the well of his audience against the preterists by saying and making the point, hey guys, if these guys are right, then baptism is no longer important, then he has swayed the audience, in spite of the fact that the argument simply does not prove that the Lord has not come. And I have made this point in one discussion after another. I have said, where is the direct connection? Where do you find the direct connection that says, number one, baptism would only endure until the day of the Lord? Where do you find that language? I.e., you don't. Secondly, where do you find any indication, any kind of language that says, if baptism is no longer valid, then covenant eschatology is falsified? You don't find it. And so his argument is truly what you call a non sequitur. It does not logically follow the argument that he's making. He simply tried to poison the well of his audience. Now, I think it unfortunate if Holger did not address that issue. I think that's unfortunate. So I think he had the opportunity there to respond to that claim and at least refute it to a certain extent. But again, that's hindsight. I have said many, many, many times in debates, after debates that I've had, boy, I should have said this and I should have said that. I should have addressed this point. I should have addressed that point. There have been a few debates that afterwards I literally said, you know what? I covered what I needed to cover. I said what I needed to say. I don't think I left anything important laying on the table unresolved and unanswered. But in about 9 out of 10 cases, you generally wind up saying, oh, man, why didn't I say this? Or why didn't I say that? But you can't say everything that needs to be said. That's just simply the nature of formal public debates.
Yeah, and if it's like it was, with my debate with Steve, I had every intention of arguing on, one particular text, and for some reason, I went through 4 nights of debate, and I don't even think I touched on it other than to just mention it. I never did get into the argumentation of it, but it didn't matter that much. And while we're talking about things that you might omit, I want to give a shout out to James and Ruth Jean, who hosted us in allowing us to stay in, their property. We have had some very, very blessed opportunities in, I think, our last 3 debates. When we went to Pensacola, Florida with the Denham debate, and then we went to Springfield. Well, this wasn't a debate, but it was the lectures. And here again, when we went to this particular debate, someone has, stepped in and allowed us to, we had, 9 preachers in Springfield in the same place, I think.
Springville, yeah.
Springville. I keep saying Springfield.
Yeah, there were a bunch of us.
California.
Yeah.
And we had about 8, in the place in Pensacola, but they had this very nice, it was kind of nostalgic, but it was very, very nice. They had gone in and refurbished the place. They had these 10 ceilings. It was 12-foot ceilings, really nice bedrooms, bathrooms, everything clean and sharp. And, of course, we played a joke on Hogan. Steve and I told him that it was the most horrible place that he ever wanted to stay in. And he was so disappointed about it that he was talking about getting us a hotel room. But and when he stepped into the place, he found out how nice it was. But I just want to say on their behalf that it was a very gracious gesture on their part, very generous, and just awfully nice place, and was so homey. And then there was this really nice restaurant right next door. And we were talking about driving over town, and they said, well, let's just go next door and see. And we went there and had just a wonderful meal, one of the best meals we had the whole time we were there. But it was right next door, and everybody was, so nice. So the accommodations that they made for us were just absolutely, 100% and above. And so I want to, say thank you to James and Ruth Jean for the accommodations that they made for us.
Well, that's great. It's wonderful when people can be hospitable, they can be gracious, they can be kind, they can be brotherly, even if they disagree with you theologically. one of the things that you and I both have marveled at through the years, William, is how at times it almost seems like our brethren, they feel justified in treating us as outcasts, as pariahs, and as their overt enemies. They've treated us in ways that are literally ungodly. They have told falsehoods about us, blatant, outright falsehoods. And they do so all under the guise of, quote, defending the truth, unquote. But really, honestly, that's inexcusable. They fail to realize, and this is something that constantly challenges me. I know it challenges you, and I think it should challenge almost anyone. They fail to realize that those of us who have become preterists, we were not always preterists. And we didn't become preterists to win popularity contests. We didn't become preterists. Sure. We didn't become preterists to become wealthy. And so, they seem to think that we became preterists almost on a whim. Oh, you know what? I think I'm gonna become a preterist and have people call me all sorts of names. I'm going to be blackballed. I'm going to be disfellowshipped. I'm going to have articles written about me, calling me horrendous names. I'm going to have people telling lies about me. But, man, sign me up for this.
Lose my job, lose your income source.
Yeah.
Put your family at risk and in jeopardy because you have a conviction for truth. And they think you just do it because, as you say, you're trying to make a name for yourself or something. That's horrible. Yeah. I had a much better name when I was considered, with mainstream eschatology.
Absolutely. Yes. And, the funny thing about it is when I was a young man and I was struggling with my own traditional views and I began to share my views with some of my preaching peers, one of the things that I heard the most often, I heard this commonly, and it was so distressing to me then, and it's equally distressing now. But I had some of my preaching friends say, now look, Don, you've got a great career in the churches of Christ ahead of you. I had people say, these are their words, not mine, you're a rising star in the church. But if you keep going along these lines, you're going to ruin your career. And my response at the time was, why are you talking about a career when we're talking about the truth of God's word here? Well, I'm just telling you, you've really, really got to be careful because you're going to ruin your name. Well, I certainly did ruin my name in the Churches of Christ traditional fellowship. Because once again, like you, I became a pariah. Churches that had once invited me to hold gospel meetings, that held me in high esteem, I'm not even welcome to walk in their doors now, literally. And I most assuredly would never, ever be invited to speak at one of their get-togethers.
And if you ask a question at a lecture, you could almost get physically thrown out.
Oh, my goodness, yes, as you well know. Yes. And so when our opponents take what could almost be described as a flippant attitude of opposition to us, they just act as if we are where we are right now, and that we got here by giving it no thought, no consideration. We got here without any struggle whatsoever, without any sacrifice whatsoever, and it's their job to impugn us and to impugn our integrity, to impugn our motives. I've had people say some of the most ungodly, unkind, malicious things about me, and I have warned other preachers and other people who have called me up and who have come to accept covenant eschatology and have called me saying, tell me what's going to happen. And I've shared with them what's going to happen. I've shared with them that some of their friends are going to turn their back on them. Some of their friends are going to actually lie about them. Some of their friends are going to turn on them so maliciously that they literally can't believe what's happening. And I have had them say, oh, no, that could never, ever happen. My friends love me too much. My congregation loves me too much. We've got a great fellowship. I've got great elders, et cetera. And my response has been, well, I hope that you are right. I hope that your situation is truly distinctive and truly different from all of the other congregations that I'm aware of that have gone through this. But just be warned that although you think the people and their love for you will cause them to treat you properly, that you are probably going to get rudely awakened. And I've had those same individuals call me back later in tears, in sorrow, literally heartbroken, telling me that everything that I had said had come true. And so it is absolutely incredible. And I think this ought to be a challenge, not only to those who are not preterists, but really it ought to be a challenge also to those even within the preterist world. You know, William, you and I both are under constant attack by those who are in the preterist world, but they disagree with some of the positions that we take. And so as a result of their opposition to our positions, we are false teachers. We are Kingites. We are cult leaders. We are this and we are that. There is no decorum. There is no courtesy. There is no respect. It is all contempt. Now, I'm personally convinced that in the case of some of these individuals, that the motivation is nothing but jealousy over the fact that you and I are pretty much out on the front lines. We're very visible. And some of these individuals that attack us relentlessly and impugn us, they are not as recognized, nor are they as appreciated as you and I are. I think that's just a statement of fact. And so they attempt, in order to build themselves up, they attempt to tear us down. And they do so in such ungodly ways. And when you accost them, when you confront them with their blatant dishonesty, they refuse to change. They refuse to repent. And it is as if they do not care that they have been caught in blatant falsehoods, blatant self-contradictions. They just continue, and so they'll, in post after post after post after post, they would just simply copy and paste the same false argumentation that you and I have rejected, we have refuted, we have falsified and rejected over and over and over again. And yet, doesn't bother them. They just keep making the same accusations.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment on something you said a moment ago regarding those who just thought that we jumped out here on a whim. Well, if they gave a moment's thought to that when they look and listen to the debates that we've had and the writings and presentations that we do, they would have to at least, hopefully, reconsider that thought. Even some of the people that we have debated have come back and said that, I don't agree with those guys, but if you're going to debate them, you better do your homework. And so that tells you that if you're debating and defending your views, and especially when many of them don't even want to come near a debate. I mean, look at, when's the last time there was a debate in Memphis? 1994. And they boycotted that one.
Yes.
It lets you know they cannot believe that we have not given some serious thought to these positions, both theirs and ours.
Well, that was illustrated years and years ago, and it's been illustrated many times since then. And the very thing that you related a moment ago about the Memphis School of Preaching, they hold mock debates against covenant eschatology, but when you had an actual debate with one of the heroes of the school, or appreciated by the school, they told their own students that if they attended, they would suffer consequences for it. But some years ago, Wayne Jackson, who of course has been an outspoken critic of our review, and I have challenged Wayne over and over and over again to debate me. He has refused every single time. But some years ago, a younger minister got in touch with me, and he wanted to know if I would debate Wayne Jackson. He did not know of my background with Wayne. And I told him I would be thrilled to death to debate Wayne Jackson, but Wayne Jackson simply would not debate me. And he said, that's an absolute falsehood. Wayne Jackson will debate anybody. And I wrote back and I said, oh, pardon me. I said, no, sir, you're wrong. I said, I have personally challenged Wayne to debate me numerous times, and he refuses to debate me. And he said, I don't believe you. And he said, I'll get this debate set up. I said, okay, that's fine. You go for it, but you have to understand that Wayne Jackson will not debate me. And I said, now here's what I want you to do. I want you to give me your word of honor that when you contact Wayne Jackson about debating me and that he turns me down, that you will get back in touch with me and you'll tell me what he said. He said, okay, I will. But he said, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to get this debate set up. It's going to happen. Well, okay, that's fine. Well, lo and behold, he contacted me after a good little while, and he says, well, Wayne Jackson says that he will not debate you because you don't have any credibility. You don't have any standing. You're not well known enough for him to debate. He will debate Max King, but he will not debate you because you're an absolute nobody in the preterist movement. But he said, I have to tell you, I'm very disillusioned over this. And he said, so I want to tell you what I told him. When he told me that he would not debate you, I told him that I would. And he said, Wayne Jackson told me, whatever you do, do not debate Don Preston. Now, I'm relaying the words of this fella who was honest enough to tell me what had happened and what was said. He said, Wayne Jackson told me, whatever you do, do not debate Don Preston. He will, quote, chew you up and spit you out, unquote. And he said, I could not believe what I was hearing. He said, Wayne Jackson has been my hero for years and years. And so for him to refuse to debate you and to urge me not to debate you no matter what, he said that is very, very disconcerting to me. Well, you know, William, you and I both know that with an awful lot of these outspoken critics like this, they well know that if they get on a debate platform with us, they're really going to be debating themselves. Wayne Jackson knew that for sure. Wayne Jackson knew that he took the position that the new heaven and new earth of Isaiah 65:66 came in AD 70. Wayne Jackson knew that he was on record as saying that we have to honor the time statements of eminence of the New Testament. So Wayne Jackson realized very well that if he dared step on a debate platform with me, since I had been following his ministry, had been collecting his writings for 15 years or more, he knew that he would not be debating just me, he would be debating himself. Well, William, it looks to me like we're out of time. Just wanted to take opportunity this evening for you to give us a report on the debate and give it a little bit of news, what else is going on. Folks, do not forget, Preterist Pilgrim Weekend, July 12th through 14th, Ardmore, Oklahoma, 2018, Ardmore Convention Center. Go to my website, donkpreston.com or BibleProphecy.com, and contact us either phone call or email and let us know that you're going to come, because we're going to have a catered meal and we need to know how many are going to be there. If you can't be there, then plan on being with us through the free live stream. So, thanks again for joining us tonight on Two Guys and a Bible here on Fulfilled Radio, a voice you can trust. With that, I will say good night and God bless.
Thank you for joining the Two Guys and a Bible radio broadcast. On behalf of Dunn Preston and myself, we'd like to say have a very pleasant day and may God bless. Until next time, we'll see you on Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust.